The Trump movement has been a political phenomenon, but beyond the man, what is it that has led so many Americans to turn away from democracy as we know it and favor the MAGA movement? Isaac Arnsdorf is a national political reporter for The Washington Post who covers Trump, the MAGA political movement, and those who power the Republican Party. His new book, just released today, Finish What We Started, the MAGA Movement's Ground War to End Democracy. Isaac joins me now. Isaac, congratulations on release day. Thanks for being with me. Let me get right to it, which is to say, as I said in the lead-in, so the Trump movement here, you address that in the book, but not by explaining the man. It's not about Trump. There's plenty of books on that. It's really about getting into the untruths that so many of his followers have bought into and turned on democracy. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's right. And the book opens in the period right after January 6th, when the movement really changed from what it was before and was very much in flux. And Trump at that time himself was really out of the picture. He was basically in hiding at Mar-a-Lago. And into that void, his former advisor, Steve Bannon, stepped in with this idea called the precinct strategy, which was basically presenting an explanation of a way to understand what had just happened, which is that the reason that Trump failed to keep himself in power on January 6th was because of a handful of uncooperative Republicans who let the Democrats get away with stealing the election. And what they needed to do was take over the party organization from the bottom to the top, from the local level all the way up to the Republican National Committee. And that if they did that, they could purify the party and make sure that next time things would be different.
So you make the point. Certainly Trump is indispensable in this process, yet your focus is on the individuals, as you call them, the faces in the crowd. How do you make the point by looking at these individuals? What do we learn from that?
Yeah, and part of the challenge is, well, who do you pick? And so in the course of my reporting for the Post, and I used to be at ProPublica, and I also did some work with This American Life. And so I went around and have met so many people, not just at Trump rallies, but out in Republican Party organizations, and kind of gravitated toward a handful of them who were representative of a lot of others, but were fun and had a lot of personality and were willing to be open with me and to kind of share their experience. And the point was to try to understand what these questions mean to them and to push past the labels that we hear thrown around and really try to get a deeper understanding.
And many of them represent somebody. You talk about Dan Schultz, who described himself as not being a political guy, but he came to believe the government was coming for his guns, didn't want his kids. They had to be saved from socialism. That's what I mean, save them from socialism. And he never doubted the election was stolen. And yet there's many people just like Dan Schultz.
Well, and Dan's hero is Barry Goldwater, and he kind of grew up in the 90s militia movement. And so what he's representing there is sort of a connection to a much longer, deeper history of what we now call MAGA. And I think that's really key to understanding where this came from and how it could have such broad appeal, is understanding actually that continuity with something that has long existed in American political culture and just never had someone who could popularize it the way that Trump did.
By the way, you do say, people like Glenn Youngkin, you write about him, who won as governor of Virginia, very different kind of Republican. You sort of say things could have gone in a different direction, a party not owned by Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that moment after January 6th, and then also the moment right after the midterms, when all these MAGA candidates who the Republicans nominated lost because they couldn't win with independents, and they even alienated some Republicans. And so that's going to be a huge tension again in this year's election. Trump. The quickest way, the most direct path to winning 50% plus one would be to win those Republicans back. That's not really the way that Trump is going about it, because Trump and his movement are in this feedback loop of pushing each other to be more and more extreme. And actually the strategy that they're kind of banking on is converting people to become MAGA, MAGA, and they don't know it yet. They're kind of reaching for the high-hanging fruit instead.
By the way, the title of the book, Finish What We Started, that is not a random comment that you used to give a title to the book. It goes back to CPAC. And in fact, you go on to talk about Steve Bannon, who's a real force here, who basically says one side's going to win, one's going to lose, no compromise here. Talk about why you selected that title.
Yeah, it's a refrain from Trump's speeches and Trump's rallies, and it's a reference to both the unfinished business of Trump's administration, policy-wise, but also that sense that the 2020 election was stolen from them, and they're here to vindicate that by restoring Trump to power in 2024.
So, and you continue to do your work. You're following all that's going on today. So I'm sort of curious, as you have the long vision picture of this, how permanent is the MAGA hold on the party? I mean, will the Republican Party ever return to what it once was, once perhaps the Trump factor is out of it?
Well, a big part of the point of the precinct strategy was that by channeling the movement into the party organization, it gives the movement an institutional home and a structure and a purpose, and that provides a kind of durability that will outlast the cult of personality around Trump the man.
It's a fascinating book. Finish What We Started. As I mentioned, it was just released today. Congratulations for spending release day with me. I appreciate it. For more information, check out social media or hatchetbookgroup.com. Isaac Arnsdorf, congratulations. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.